Tonight, and hundreds of primary schools across the region are ready to boycott next week's SATs tests.
Yes, at the moment, the number of schools affected runs into dozens, but it seems many more could join the ban.
Head teachers are taking action because they say they're opposed to the idea of school league tables, but local councils are warning of disciplinary action against those taking part. Malcolm Robertson reports.
How do we define a prime number?
Elizabeth Louis teaching maths to Year 6 children at Barnham Broom Primary School in Norfolk. These 10 and 11-year-olds should be taking their SATs tests next week, but this is one of 37 schools across the county that's decided to boycott them. Barnham Broom's had its problems with SATs. 2 years ago, their papers were returned unmarked because of problems with the company administering them. The decision to boycott these latest ones has been taken by head teacher Keith Wright, president of the Norfolk branch of the National Association of Head Teachers, which, along with the NUT, is taking action. His school does well in league tables, but he thinks they're unfair.
We're not against tests. We've never been against the tests. It's just how the data is used as almost like a single line of judgment for Ofsted to come in. And I've seen too many colleagues go in the last year or two purely because of the stress of that one-bit judgment.
This afternoon, he explained his decision to parents.
Putting them under those stressful conditions, you're perhaps not going to get an accurate idea of what their levels actually are. So, no, I'm fully supportive of the school.
I've listened to what Mr Wright's had to say. Obviously, I respect his professional judgment. The school won't be doing SATs this year.
Although schools might be refusing to do the SATs, they will be working normally. It seems that in our region, just a minority of primary schools will be boycotting the SATs. We don't know at this stage what sanctions, if any, local authorities will be taking against head teachers, but it is possible that they might dock their pay or even suspend them. Thousands of children in the eastern counties are likely to be affected. We asked a number of county councils if they'd be available for interview on camera. None obliged. Some schools might be on a collision course with boards of governors over the boycott, but at Barnham Broom, they're fully behind the head's decision.
What we think about here is the children, and obviously we have issues with the SATs, and we have to somewhere make a stand, I think, so that things can be changed, because it really doesn't work properly as the system now is.
Today at Barnham Broom, they were preparing for their own version of the general election and will be voting tomorrow. How many other schools vote to support the SATs ban will become clearer over the next few days. Malcolm Robertson, Anglia News.
Well, it's an interesting debate. So, are head teachers right to boycott those SATs tests?
Well, if you're a teacher or a parent and you're affected by the planned boycott, we would, of course, like to hear from you. You can email your views to Jonathan and Becky at itv.com. There it is.
Next, the new evidence that proves that Black Africans were living in Suffolk as long ago as the 13th century.
Yep, 9 skeletons excavated more than 10 years ago from the ruins of a friary in Ipswich have finally been proved to be of sub-Saharan origin. And as Natalie Gray explains, that's caused some excitement among the experts.
No one knows his name, but because of him, history is having to be rewritten. You see, this medieval man was African and living right here in our region 800 years ago. He was one of 9 black men and women dug up in an ancient cemetery near the old friary in Ipswich, which is now flats and offices. Forensic teams have used 21st century techniques to date this 13th century skeleton.
We know that the Vikings brought African slaves over, certainly to Ireland, perhaps not here. And of course we are in a port here, so one might expect the odd African to step off a boat, literally either for some reason and stay here. But it's certainly the earliest evidence we have in Ipswich, yes.
Most hard evidence of early African migrants dates from the beginning of the 17th century. But most historians agree that there were probably people of African descent stationed on Hadrian's Wall with the Romans from the 2nd century AD. This skeleton is the oldest piece of positive proof found in Suffolk, perhaps even in the country. How did he get here? Well, we know he was of sub-Saharan origin, and trade routes probably brought him to Tunisia and then on to Ipswich.
Perhaps he was scooped up as part of the Crusades and brought back to Ipswich, because certainly he spent his later life in Ipswich and died here, probably of a rather serious abscess on his back.
At Ipswich Museum, they're excited by the findings.
This is a first real concrete piece of evidence for a sub-Saharan, a black African presence in England in the Middle Ages at the time of the Crusades.
The ancient cemetery is long gone, so too is the friary, but that had nothing to do with developers. Sadly, nothing remains of the ancient friary apart from 2 stone windows. That's because it was demolished by Henry VIII in 1538 as part of his dissolution of the monasteries. The findings have thrown up more questions than answers. Was this man related to the other 8 Africans found buried nearby? It's hoped more research will help unravel further this marvellous medieval mystery. Natalie Gray, Anglia News, Ipswich.
Right, it's coming to 6:15. Still to come tonight, Amanda with... Police investigating an attack on a man in a Suffolk park have made a 6th arrest. A man in his 20s was found with serious injuries at Orwell Country Park in Nacton on Monday. He's being treated at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. A 20-year-old man and a 20-year-old woman from Ipswich have been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. 4 others have been released on police bail.
Flights from Luton and Stansted airports have been disrupted for a second day because of a volcanic ash cloud over Scotland and Ireland. EasyJet and Ryanair cancelled flights to Ireland and Scotland, and officials at both airports have advised passengers to contact their airlines before setting out. The disruption was the latest caused by the eruption in Iceland. Now, travellers living on one of the biggest illegal sites in Europe are stepping up their fight against eviction.
Around 500 people on Dale Farm at Crays Hill near Billericay in Essex could be forced to leave after the House of Lords refused to hear their appeal last year.
But they're hoping that the cost of an eviction and new planning guidelines could save them. Lorna Ramsey reports.
The sign may have changed, but the message is still the same. Many people living here say they can't imagine the bulldozers rolling in.
Deep down in my heart, I don't believe it's ever going to happen. How can it happen? How can you imagine can they put people out on the side of the road?
To avoid that happening, travellers are looking at moving onto land at Gardeners Lane South in Basildon. Gretton Puxon from the Dale Farm Housing Association tells me an eviction could cost millions.
If Dale Farm could become permanent, that would save a lot of public money and also quite a furore about where else a site could be developed, because there'll always be opposition.
New planning guidelines made public after Freedom of Information requests is also giving people living on Dale Farm hope. The land east of this pylon is the part of Dale Farm that's been developed illegally on Greenbelt land. But the guidelines say that developments like this are allowed in very special circumstances. Over the years, the site has been opposed by local people, local planners, and by decisions in the courts. The head of Environment Services at Basildon Council, Dawn French, said it should be noted that if the council is unsuccessful in engaging with the travellers, the council would have no choice but to proceed with an eviction. Travellers may have made this site their home, but they know that by being on Greenbelt land, the threat of eviction is never far away. Lorna Ramsey, Anglia News, Crays Hill.
An animal charity